Welcome back to Homesteading with the Zimmermans, where we work hard and play hard on our little corner of land in Iowa. My husband and I were born and raised Old Order Mennonite, or horse and buggy Mennonite, as some refer to them as. And although we are no longer part of that culture or community, we are intentional about passing on the old-fashioned skills of our childhood to the next generation. Good morning, everybody. Ruth Ann Zimmerman here with Homesteading with the Zimmermans. And it is Monday morning. The kids are all back to school after our week of spring break. And winter is back. In last week's video, I showed us having summer-like weather, and that was very unusual. But we have days, like 10, 14 days in the forecast where temperatures are not going to go far above freezing. We've got lots of snow in the forecast and some rain, which is good because we need the moisture. And so I am going to make it my priority this week to work on our cold room. And some of the things I can in late winter are for our summer meals. So I made the noodles last week, the pasta, and that will, make us some real easy meals this spring as the spring gets busy. We have a whole freezer full of hamburger patties and beef hot dogs from an older cow that we harvested. And alongside of hamburgers and hot dogs, we like to serve baked beans and mac and cheese, which I'll use my homemade pasta for. And also, I need to use up all the potatoes because they're getting soft and sprouting. So I'm going to can up the sweet potatoes, our regular potatoes, and I'm going to can some baked beans. So I am going to get started with canning baked beans because those are real easy to get into the pressure canners. And while those are canning, I can work on getting my potatoes ready because they are a little more labor intense to get prepped for the jars. So I have an older video of canning baked beans, so I'm going to walk you through canning those. And in the older video, I use pinto beans, but we have since discovered that we really like using navy beans for our canned baked beans because they get a little softer and they're a little more like the Bush's baked beans that you buy at the grocery store. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need 1 cup of dry beans for every quart jar. So I'm just going to measure how many beans I have left in here so that I know how many jars to bring up from the basement. And then I order my organic navy beans from Azure Standard. I will put that link in the description. And we're just going to can up what we have left here. 1. So there's about 6 cups in there. So that will fill 1 canner real nice. And we're just going to rinse these. Now, into these clean jars, to each of these clean jars, I'm going to put 1 cup of navy beans. So many websites will recommend that you soak your dry beans overnight before canning them, but we have found that that makes our end product much mushier than if we dry can them. The soaking overnight is not a necessary step. You can absolutely do it that way if you want to. It does not help shorten your processing time. You still have to process them for 90 minutes to heat them thoroughly and kill any chances of botulism spores. However, I am not concerned about botulism in this baked bean recipe, and I'll tell you why. So next, into each jar, I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of dried onion. You could use about 1/4 to 1/2 cup finely chopped fresh onion if you wanted to. Next, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt to each jar. So the next ingredient that I'm going to add is why I don't fear botulism in my baked beans. Okay, next into each jar, I am going to put 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Although the beans themselves are a low acid product, the vinegar in each jar is going to bring that acid level up, and botulism cannot grow in an acidic environment. And then I'm going to put 1/2 teaspoon of mustard. And remember that this recipe will be linked in the description where you can print it out and add it to your recipe book. So I need 1/2 teaspoon of prepared mustard. I have 0 teaspoons of prepared mustard in my refrigerator or in my pantry. I've added it to my list, but I do have Dijon mustard, so I'm going to use that, and I do not think the family will notice a difference. So you can use your 1/2 teaspoon measuring spoon if you want, but I'm just going to eyeball it and call it good. Next, we need 1/4 a cup of brown sugar in each jar. You could use honey or maple syrup if you want. So the next thing I'm going to add is ketchup, and you can use store-bought ketchup. I'm going to use our home canned ketchup, and I'm going to add 1/2 a cup of ketchup to each jar. So I'm going to use my 1/2 cup measuring cup. Put 1/2 a cup of ketchup into each jar. So into each jar, when I've added the ketchup, I am going to take hot water and I'm going to rinse down any ketchup that stayed in the funnel, and I'm going to fill it to within 1 inch of headspace. And if you have this nice 4 jars funnel, it shows you the headspace right on the funnel. So now that I've got all my ingredients in, I'm just going to stir them up a little bit. So next I'm just going to wipe the rims of each jar to make sure that I've got nothing on there that could prevent my jar from sealing. And then I am going to use my 4 jars, canning lids, and I will have the link for these in the description. I'm just gonna turn each ring just finger tight, meaning just against. Turn it until it goes against, and then you stop. So I am opening my brand new 4 jars pressure canner. And last fall, I did a YouTube video where I compared the Presto pressure canner to the All-American, and I'll link that video. And today, I am going to try out my 4 jars pressure canner, and at the end of the video, I will give you an update on how it worked and how it compared to the All-American and the Presto. Oh, it even comes with some canning tools. I love it. So it's got a jar grabber, it's got a funnel. This is a magnet. Oh, this is to get your lids out of your boiling water. A pair of tongs. And a headspace measurer. And this is to open jars or to grab jars. I've got 2 packs of lids in there. Comes with 2 plates. And this is the seal or the extra seal. Let me check. Yeah, this is, so the lid already has a seal, so that's your replacement seal. Okay, so this is the pressure gauge. So the pressure gauge goes on. And then on the other side, I'm going to put the washer and then the nut. And I'm going to tighten that. And then here is your weight. So when you put it on like this, this is 5 pounds. This is 10 pounds. And then if you put them both on, that's 15 pounds. And we are ready to get started. So first of all, I'm gonna wipe my stove top to make sure there's no grease or anything on it that could really bake down onto my burners. So I'm going to place my pressure canner on the burner. I'm going to put in 1 plate. Then I'm going to put in all my jars of beans. So then, because I used hot water when I filled my bean jars with water, I'm also using hot water to get this started. It will save me time. It'll just save me a couple minutes by starting with hot water. So you want to add water until about the bottom 1 inch of your jar is covered with water. And that's going to be a little different for each pressure canner depending on how big they are and how big your plate is. So I'm going to get this started. I'm going to turn it on high for now. And I'm going to put my lid on. Have this backwards, or I might be trying to do it backwards. Could be wrong. There we go. The lid latches much like the Presto pressure canner. Okay, so far this operates much like my Presto pressure canner, which is my favorite one to use on my glass cooktop because it's not so heavy. We are going to leave this one alone until the steam starts coming out of the vent. And I'm going to head to my cold room and gather up all the wrinkly old potatoes we have. And I'm also going to organize things a little bit on the shelves and just kind of get an idea of what we are running low on. also going to process all of these sweet potatoes because they're not going to stay good much longer. So I'm going to take some of the nicer ones and I'm going to sprout them to make myself some new sweet potato plants. Maybe I better call my mom and see if I'm too late. So now that I have spent some time here in my cold room and I've organized some things, here's what I know. I have plenty of canned beef and we can drink lots of grape juice between now and September. I'm really low on canned chicken and canned broth, and the salsa is extremely low. And green beans we still have plenty of, but it's another 3-4 months before we'll harvest any green beans, so that's okay. I have a lot of cherry pie filling, but most of my other pie fillings are getting really low. And here's kind of my overflow. I have more green beans. Pasta sauce is about where I would expect it for this year. It'll go, what is it now, March, April, May, June, July, August. We've got half a year left to go before we will can some more pasta sauce. So we're about halfway through the year. And we've gone through, of the 150 quarts of green beans that we had, we've gone through almost 100 quart. And that's about right because as we start getting more fresh vegetables from the garden, we will not eat as many green beans as we did in the winter time. I've got a little bit of applesauce up there. That's about enough to get us through the rest of the year. Got some canned carrots, but I still need to go through my box of carrots and sort through those. I've got pepper cabbage, some canned, there's some canned pumpkin puree, and I've got some canned pears left and some zucchini pineapples. I should bring a jar of those up. The kids would eat those for a snack. And that's about it. So the next thing, so I've got all my potatoes sorted and ready to take upstairs. And in case you're wondering, in these buckets is my flour and sugar and things like that. Next, we are going to sort through the carrots and get any bad ones out of that container. Okay, so my onions are pretty much all dried up that were in here. So these are all garbage. We used everything. We didn't have a whole lot of onions left after we were done canning. So this wasn't a great onion storage year. So basically we put our carrots in this dry shavings, and I'm just gonna go through, and I'll probably be cooking some potatoes for the pigs, so I'm just gonna throw these carrots in as well. The kids told me there was rotten ones in here, so I'm just going to, oh, yep, there's a bad one. There's my timer. I gotta go check my pressure canner. Okay, it is steaming out of the vent now, and I want my pressure gauge to stay around 12 pounds of pressure. So I'm going to put my 10-pound pressure weight on there. And as the pressure comes up, this little vent here will seal as well, because the pressure wheel will push that little knob into this hole and seal that. Just like that. So now that we've got the gauge on, got the weight on, our pressure gauge is going to start coming up. So, because I'm working downstairs, I am going to set my timer for 5 minutes, and I'm going to come check it every 5 minutes. And I'm using my stovetop timer because this timer will keep on beeping until you hit cancel. So that's sure to get my attention. Look at that beauty. Oh, yeah, there's bad ones down there. It's probably where the moisture's coming from. Okay, because these are the only good carrots left, I am just going to peel these. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is going to put them in the refrigerator. I might slice some for the kids as snacks. And the rest of this tub, we are just going to dump to the pigs, and they will enjoy digging through it for their carrot treats. So, the question might be, why did I have so many carrots to throw out? And here is the answer. Or here's what I believe went wrong. Because the ground was so hard and dry last fall when we dug the carrots out of the ground, the boys broke a lot of the carrots. And anywhere that a carrot was broken, it started getting soft. And then there was too much moisture in the tote because of those carrots that started decaying. And then, of course, when there's too much moisture, then more carrots will decay. So that is, I believe, what happened. Is it started last fall when we packaged them with all the broken carrots in them. But here we go. We've got what we need to keep working. Okay, so because I have a 10-pound weight on here, this is going to start shaking like this when the gauge reaches approximately 10 pounds. But because I want to keep my beans at more of a 12-pound weight, so between 10 and 15, I'm going to add another 5-pound weight. So that'll make this 15. So now it won't start shaking until it gets close to 15, which is what I want. I want to keep my pressure between 10 and 15 pounds. I don't want this to shake until it gets close to 15. I'll have all of the detailed instructions in the description. So the first thing I'm going to do is peel these potatoes. Now when I can potatoes in the fall after we dig them, and the peels are nice and thin, I don't peel them then because the peels are nice and thin. But after they've sat all winter and the peels are chunky, I'm going to take these peels off. The family will be much happier that way. And if I were to can store-bought potatoes, I would also peel them, just because almost all store-bought potatoes are treated with a herbicide to keep them from sprouting. The reason I'm starting with the white potatoes is because white potatoes are starchy, and I want to soak them in cold water to remove some of the starch before I can them. So while these are soaking, I can work on the sweet potatoes then. I do have a complete video on dry canning potatoes, and I'm going to link that one in the description for you, but I'm also going to try my hand at linking it here on the screen for you. All right, guys, here's what the progress on our potatoes looks like. So I've got this pot and all my peeled and diced potatoes in cold water. And the starch in the potatoes is gonna leach out into the water, and then we're gonna drain and rinse them before we can them. And here, I saved some that were outside of our cold room on some cardboard, and they have beautiful sprouts. So I'm going to save these for planting. And then here I have a pot full of bad parts of potatoes, some that were too little and I didn't want to peel them, and all the peels. And I'm going to cook these for our pigs. So raw potatoes and raw potato peels contain something called solanine. And solanine, when eaten in large quantities, can be toxic to pigs and dogs because it's really hard on their digestive system. Our pigs, the number one reason I am cooking these is because if I give them to the pigs like this, they'll just make a mess and they won't really eat them because instinctively they are not drawn to potato peels. They would have to be starving before they would willingly eat potato peels. And our pigs are definitely not starving. So if I cook them, however, they will go crazy over them and they love them. So I'm going to cook these for the pigs, and for today they will get a large amount of their carbs from this pot full of potato peels, and that will help our feed bill for today. All right, let's revisit these little potatoes that we're going to use for sprouting. Because these were not in the cold room, they got some light, and therefore their sprouts are green. The potatoes that were inside the cold room where it's dark, their sprouts are white. And they get really long because they're searching for the light. And the reason that I am going to keep these for planting is because the potatoes inside the cold room were not yet soft. They were still fairly firm. But these potatoes have already put so much energy into these sprouts, these very healthy sprouts, that they are really, really soft. And I don't want to use these just because they're not the best quality when they've already, and they won't provide the best nutrition either if they've already put so much of their energy into these sprouts. So I'm just going to dry these and put them somewhere in a dry spot until it's warm enough again to plant them out. Even though I already have some potatoes in the ground, I'm not going to put these out. All right, we are ready to start working on our sweet potatoes. And you're going to want to take your narrow end of your sweet potato and put it in the water. I'm going to add more water. And that's how we're going to start this year's sweet potato plants. And because my windowsill is not real wide, I can tell that I'm going to have to break these off because they're going to catch at everything. So on second thought, toothpicks are going to be a much better idea. Yep, that's going to work better. And we're just going to rest it there. We're going to put it on the windowsill just like that. There we've got our second sweet potato. So if you're sprouting your own sweet potatoes like this, you'll want to make sure you use organic sweet potatoes, because if they're not organic, they have been treated with an herbicide that will prevent them from sprouting. I might be a little too late for this year, but we're definitely going to see what happens. So 1 hour and 30 minutes is up for my beans. So I'm going to turn the burner off, and we're going to let that gauge come down to 0. So once your pressure has come down to 0, give it a good 30 minutes you can take this off. And that'll release the rest of the pressure. And then I like to let it set for another good 15 to 20 minutes. Because what's going to happen with these aluminum, these lighter ones, the Presto and this one, is when you open the lid, the jars are going to cool down so fast that the temperature difference causes the product to boil out. So this one so far has done a lot better than the Presto because it has a much heavier bottom. But I'm still going to let it set for probably another 30 minutes and let that temperature come down slowly instead of opening it up and having the temperature drop drastically real fast. That's what causes your product to boil out of the jars. So now I'm going to open this. And what I'm looking for, I don't want to see anything boiling out. See there, you can see that one boiled out a little bit. And although they're still bubbling a little bit, they're not viciously bubbling to the point where if I get them out, they're going to boil over. So these are ready to remove. So I'm going to peel my sweet potatoes because I would rather peel them than scrub them. So my sweet potatoes are still surprisingly solid for having been stored in the cold room for 6 months. But I'm going to can them anyway because I know that they are going to start breaking down and wanting to sprout soon. And spring and summer, when we're busy outside, is when I most appreciate the convenience of canned foods. All right, we are ready to dry can these sweet potatoes. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna layer them all in. So I've got 7 quarts of sweet potatoes in here. Now, before you all come at me and tell me that this is not a USDA approved recipe, let me tell you that I am aware of that fact. And if you're not comfortable canning anything except USDA approved recipes, then that's perfectly fine. This recipe is probably not for you. So what many people don't understand about botulism is that number one, if there was botulism on your product and if it survived your pressure canning and had the toxin that's going to make you ill had grown in your jars, that toxin is deactivated when you heat your product over 100 degrees for a minute or more. So if you're not going to be opening your product and eating it without heating it, then you're even less likely to become sick from botulism. So because we're going to fry these potatoes and we're going to heat the beans, I am not concerned. Okay, so one more area that I need to sort through is my squash. And I don't even remember the name of them, but I know that these big ones were Pennsylvania Dutch crookneck. And a lot of these are still nice and solid. These were the Trombocino squash, and these we've mostly fed to the pigs throughout the winter. So we are I'm going to go in my seed stash and see if I have already saved seeds from these. And if I haven't, I'm going to save seeds from these two, and then we're going to take the rest to the pigs because they're getting soft. Okay, so there is the seeds from the Trombocino squash, and this is an heirloom variety squash. They are very resistant to the squash borers and things like that, all your pests and diseases. And what I do is I just throw all of these seeds on my compost pile, and they grow wild there. And when they're young, we eat them like zucchinis or summer squash. And then whatever we don't get to, we just let them out there, and they will ripen and cure. And then we feed them to the pigs all winter long. And you can see it's been about 6 months since we've harvested them, and we are using the last of them now. They're soft, so come March they start breaking down more than your regular winter squash. But I'm just going to let these dry, and in a couple months we will plant them on our compost pile.
Wait. Before you eat it, guys, I want to ring it around one of your heads. Ready? Hey, I gotta get this on one of your heads. Yeah, whatever. I'm just eating those things up. Eating those things up. Oh yeah. You want the tiny one? You have to do that. They got shaved.
Now they're going to dig through and find all the carrots.
Whee! Oh! They're having a king's meal tonight.
And they're having a king's meal, aren't they?
Listen, we're going to Mama's restaurant tonight. Go.